Okay. Okay. All right, we're going to take the risk. Okay.
So, welcome everybody to the final session number 8. I just have a quick announcement, what I already mentioned before the lunch break. So we will change a little bit the agenda at the end. The reason is because, unfortunately, we had 2 presentations where our colleagues couldn't travel to Rome, and we tried to connect them remotely, but it doesn't work. So therefore, we only have 2 presentations in session 8. And this is why we move the coffee break after the panel. That's the idea. All right. And with this, over to you, Yves.
Okay, and late breaking news, we actually do have 1 remote presentation, I'm happy to say. So we'll be, unfortunately, dropping our Ugandan colleague who's not able to present. But we will be having a remote last presentation from Prudence Humanikwe from Zimbabwe. So actually, I'm really excited for this last session, session 8. As you probably saw from our UNICEF team, we're very solution-oriented kind of people. And this is the SDMX outside of statistics session. So I think it'll be an exciting solution-oriented session here that's going to start off. We'll start with Mario Rusev here from DFINE and BIS, who will be talking about applications of blockchain for SDMX. Really, really interesting to see. And then we'll be moving on to Megan Garrique from ILO, who will be discussing the ISSA Stat Data Explorer experience. And then finally we will close with a remote presentation from Prudence Humanikwa on tracing digital penetration using SDMX for spatial data analysis. So all, I think, 3 really interesting ways of looking at SDMX outside of the statistical world. And with that, let me pass to Mario.
Yeah, before Mario starts, it's actually Mario's idea, yeah? And that was like half a year ago. Mario came to us and said, have you ever thought about blockchain and what blockchain could do for SDMX? And we said, yeah, it's a very hot topic. Let's think about this. And so Mario was really the initiator of this and is the driving force. And the idea of this presentation is to test a little bit the appetite here in the community. So it's not something which we have implemented at the BIS. You will see there are some ideas why could that be useful, and we also have a prototype running which the colleagues could actually download from an open source repository. But it's all about testing the water and see whether there's an appetite for such a solution. And if there's an appetite, then of course we could bring the solution into a, let's say, more production state or environment. And we will have a little survey then at the end which we run, where you can enter your feedback. And this survey actually is something which we keep open for a while, so that you have enough time to reflect what we are talking about today and then see whether it's useful for you. All right, so let's move on. So when we talk about blockchain, I think everybody probably knows what the blockchain is, but let me just repeat again so that those of you who are not so familiar with, they know what we are talking about. So, blockchain is basically a technical concept where you, so it's called a decentralized tamper-resistant digital ledger. So what does it mean? It actually means you are storing transactions sequentially in a chain, and then you store them on a large number of servers across the globe. And this has a couple of advantages, because obviously if you just have it on one server in your institution, then server could fail, somebody could manipulate the server. So it's already good to have this decentralized approach, because then you don't have a single point of failure. The second thing is that all the transactions are logged. So that means you have full transparency and auditability of everything what has happened in the past, and you can actually go back and verify, why was this happening. So this is something which creates trust. Then you have security. So there are quite advanced cryptographic standards in order to, let's say, store these transactions. There are many different options available. In addition, you have a consensus mechanism, so protocols like proof of work or proof of stake, which basically make sure that these new blocks are only stored if there's a certain agreement. So what is important is there is no intermediary. So there's this protocol, and then once the agreement is there, the transaction will be stored. So again, this ensures that it is a neutral approach. Then in addition, blockchain, as you know, is used in many, many use cases meanwhile. The most popular one is obviously cryptocurrencies. But I think what is even more important, and I'm talking here because I have a commercial bank background, is actually for smart contracts. So when you execute a transaction, you have a lot of contractual steps happening, and blockchains are used more and more by commercial banks for this smart contracting. So lots of benefits: increased trust, enhanced security, traceability, auditability, greater efficiency, and cost reduction. All right, so why blockchain SDMX? So as I already mentioned, it's all about trust. And there are quite some cases worldwide where actually, trust is a little bit challenged, and let's say we are also challenged. And that means that, by applying this very well-established technology, we can actually show, this is something you can rely on, and it's generating trust. It ensures data integrity, so it's important, you cannot change the data once they are there. Because of this decentralized approach, the data are immutable. So we have reliable statistics. And it promotes interoperability via SDMX. This is something to be verified, and that's also where we want a little bit feedback from your side. And these blockchains, they can connect different systems, so you automatically get this cross-system compatibility. Over to you, Glenn.
Thank you. Yeah. So obviously, this comes at a cost. This is not free, either in terms of sort of the implementation or running of the blockchains. There's always costs associated with these things. So what actually is the imperative? Well, I think we all know there's a increasing trend for data consumers to get their data from non-primary sources, from ChatGPT or Google or whatever. And that means that we're beginning to lose control over what's being published in our names. This is obviously sort of what we've heard several times, that you go to ChatGPT and sort of ask it for some statistic, and it comes up with some statistics and cites the sources, and it all seems very credible, except that it's not. So, none of this is news as such. But the real problem is that if the data that people are receiving through these sort of alternative channels are wrong, and that could be either accidentally, which is probably sort of the major cause at the moment, or sort of probably more perniciously, deliberately, then people are going to start losing trust, and particularly, obviously, if the data is distributed through these sort of alternative channels and people are not getting it from these non-primary sources yet, it is still sort of linked back to our institutions, then people will lose trust. And of course, if people lose trust in our data, then it ceases to have value. And of course, this is what George Simon spoke of. I think he used virtually that exact phrase, of course, in his keynote speech. So there is a clear imperative here. So I mean, to a large extent, of course, sort of doing nothing in this data trust space is not an option. I mean, obviously, what we're presenting here is sort of one option out of maybe sort of other options as such. But it's very, very useful to obviously sort of consider this. So just very, very briefly, sort of use cases here. I mean, inevitably situations a bit more nuanced. There's sort of many potential use cases. I mean, here are two, which are probably the sort of the ones which are front and centre. I'll sort of leave you to read the detail of this sort of at your leisure, but I think they can probably be summarised as empowering users to independently verify data authenticity, and on the other side of the fence, enabling us as institutions to regain control over the data that we actually publish.
And maybe before we hand over to Mario, just on this, version authenticity. Quite often we publish corrections to our data in the past. And that is actually one option to verify, is the correction first done by the official, let's say, producer? Yeah, that's one thing. And then also, if you want to reproduce your, let's say, analysis, yeah, you are, I don't know, a researcher at the university and you want to reproduce your analysis, is the data set I'm using actually the one which I used 4 months ago? So you can actually go into the blockchain and verify, okay, yes, there were a few modifications, but actually I want to use exactly the same data set what I used 4 months ago, because I want to reproduce my result. So this is basically, these are two use cases, sub-use cases, what Glenn just mentioned, just food for thought for you. Over to you, Mario.
Thanks, Rafa. Okay, so I'll get a little bit technical on this note. What we did was we actually created a proof of concept, which will do this, and do exactly this. There is basically a garden of use cases which you can do besides visual authentication. For example, one could be interested in smart contracts which have programmable logic. They have additional authentication capabilities. There's basically algorithms which could put in this to make the whole thing a bit more complex, add features, feature sets, and so on. The other thing is you could also get automated compliance checks and automated validation. For example, if one institution is publishing some data and you don't really need to go through the whole validation process again. So for example, you don't need to run the whole transformations on validation rules. You would need to have a zero knowledge proof, or you could basically run an algorithm that will check this for you. So now, in terms of our POC, what we've built is an algorithm or a product or a little POC product which would take an SDMX file, an XML file. Then it will get its hash. So it's a SHA-3512 hash. Of course, this needs to be canonicalized to remove insignificant white spaces and so on. And then it will publish this particular file hash onto the blockchain as a memo transaction. Obviously, you could do multi-aggregation. So for example, if you have many files, or many series of the same file, and you would want to put this together or have some sort of decentralized identity on top of this, this could also work. We've also considered these whole things, how to do this mathematically and computationally. It turns out it scales logarithmically with the size of the Merkle tree, so this means you could easily have verification time over a second, a bit over a second, for millions of data sets. So here we're looking at automated verification of this whole structure, which can be integrated into AI agents and model context protocols easily within a second. And our publication time, which we are using here, is just from the XRP ledger. This could be any ledger. We're here blockchain agnostic, but this one's very green. Publication time is about 3 to 5 seconds, and we also ran some tests. Now, I also want to mention there was a recent publication from the US Department of Commerce that they are putting data points such as the GDP, the PCE, and consumer price index on a chain-link node, so on the blockchain. They put just the data points. What we're doing here is a fully fledged SDMX system and compliant with SDMX. And right, and then a bit about the costs. We also have a model to model all the costs necessary. So there's on-chain transaction costs. In this case, I'm just showing a linear plot with a particular reason. Now, if you consider proof of work or proof of stake, you would see that costs are not constant. So there's basically dependent on how many validators are there and the whole approval algorithm and so on. With this blockchain, they are constant. So anytime you have a transaction, the cost is constant. So this limits the transaction costs. It basically gives you a very, very reliable estimate of the on-chain anchoring costs. Then you have the off-chain storage and retrieval costs, the processing and orchestration costs. And another thing I would consider the economic time of delay or latency. Now, considering this whole thing, we also built a model to test this whole thing out. And I'm not sure if you can read it down. There's a little table to compare these whole things. Right, so we are looking at fixed costs for validation, which are well below a cent, you know, compared to Ethereum or Chainlink or Bitcoin or whatever. Normally, you would have a digital authority certificate, thanks, Rafa, you would do this process manually. So if you want to make sure that an institution has produced a particular data set, you would have to trust a particular anchor to do this, or a GitLab. This is in comparison to quantum credentials. You don't really trust anybody here. The whole thing is automatic. It's on the chain, so you could ask it anytime as an independent reviewer. No data is on the chain. It's only the hash, so you can't really get any information about the data set if you cannot crack the hash function. And there's one last point I want to make. We have also considered how to make this quantum sure. You know, there's a lot of chat about quantum computers and RSA algorithms and things like this. Now, we use SHA-3512. You can obviously do the same thing with a lattice problem. For example, a dilithium approach. This would be no issue. So we can do this as well. And I think that I'll just go to the video. We have a little, I don't know if you show. I mean, we can show the video, or I could just show the snapshots. Okay. Okay. So here, on the top left is basically a fast API in Streamlit, so microservice plus a GUI. We have an XRPL gateway. We are using also a bit of util functions and things like this to make sure the canonicalization is robust and do a bit more math on this. Then you can get a file, you publish the file, we write on the next image, on the top of the published file, we write the transaction hash into the source header information of the file. So then you can take this file and distribute it wherever you want. And again, for the verification process, you're taking this file. Since the transaction hash is on chain, you would get the file, do your hash yourself, compare it with the on-chain transaction memo, then the file is valid or invalid.
Okay, so you see, it's quite technical, yeah. I think there's one message, if I can just come back, if you look at this table below. we actually have a very cheap solution for this. Yeah? When you look at the Ethereum cost, our implementation is far cheaper. So when you think about implementing this, have a look at our solution, how we store the things in the blockchain. There's some thought on that, which will save you a lot of cost. So that's the first message. And then, yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning, the question is, what do you think about this? Is this useful for you? And let me just reiterate again the three main use cases here. First use case is, with a blockchain, you get, let's say, an unimmutable stamp who the golden source of this particular data point is. And this is particularly relevant if your data are used by commercial data providers or other organizations and they basically redistribute this. You can basically then always, as a final consumer, go back into the blockchain and you see, it's Eurostat who produced this. Eurostat is the official producer and you cannot change that. That's the golden source. That's use case number one. Use case number two is, since we are making a lot of corrections of our data on the public website, but we actually don't store all the history on the public website. Yeah? We are not storing all the vintages. I mean, some of you, but not all. The blockchain will enable the final consumers to always roll back to the point of how was the data 4 months ago, because I want to have reproducibility of my results. And the reason why we don't put all the data, all the, let's say, history in our data portals is because it's very costly. Yeah? So that's the second use case. So think about this. Is this something which your customers, your users are interested in? And then obviously the third one is, it's all about trust. You can be sure that this data point is linked to a log entry, the full history, and it cannot be changed. You know exactly what happened in the past. And if somebody manipulates the data, it's almost impossible. Yeah? So these are the three things. So we want to know, is this relevant for you? Would your organization be able to implement this? Do you want to collaborate with colleagues? If yes, with whom? And for this, Glenn has a Slido. And this is the QR code. And this is the QR code for the Wi-Fi, the alternative Wi-Fi. You remember yesterday we had some issues. Yeah? So if you have not yet logged into this, please scan it. And I give you 10, 20 seconds to just connect for those who have not already done this. And then on the next page, you will see the QR code for the Slido. So let me just see. There's one more. Okay, so this is the QR code for the Slido. So scan it, and how long do we keep it open, Glenn? It's here, until the 9th of October, yeah. So you have time also after the conference to fill this, have a discussion with your colleagues, and we are more than happy from a BS perspective and also from a Define perspective with Mario to follow up with you if you need more information or if you need a partner to implement this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raphael, Glenn, Mario. I think it's an idea whose apparent complexity is also, I think, matched by its power in a world of fake news and alternative facts, and many of us charged with producing official statistics. Techniques like this, I think, become ever more important. Thank you. Passing on now to Megan Garrique from ILO with the ISSA Stat Data Explorer. And you may want to use the screen over here for ease of reading.
Get your help. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll be presenting on the ESA database on international social security agreements. So the ESA is a bit of a strange creature. We sit within the ILO, but we're actually a separate organization with our separate budget and program. So we bring together various national social security administrations, and why it was created by the ILO, because Social Security is a bit more complex than a lot of the other fields of labor regulation. You need to collect contributions, pay out benefits, etc. In terms of our data, we did this project in collaboration with the Statistics Department of the ILO. Edgardo and Wenchen particularly were very crucial in helping us. And I guess why they both encouraged me to come to this is this conference is a very unusual application of SDMX. In the ESA, a lot of the statistics related to Social Security are actually collected by ILO-Stat or the Social Protection Department. What we collect is rather mostly policy data or administrative practices. And so we have various databases, and one of them is on international social security agreements. So I'll go fast at the end, so I'll go slow at the beginning. So what is an international social security agreement? So this is a formal treaty between two or more countries to protect the rights of people who move across borders for work or residency. And so these agreements are crucial for migrant workers, retirees, and international employers to ensure the fairness and continuity in social protection. So, for instance, they ensure the accumulation of years worked in two or more countries to fulfill the qualifying conditions for pensions, for example. So what do we collect in this database? So we're looking at bilateral and multilateral social security agreements that have entered into force. So with a European context, Regulation 883 is probably the one that comes first to mind, but there are a lot of also bilateral agreements. Actually, there's 650 such agreements in our database. And so it's why we decided to start with this. We have 4 other sort of policy or administrative practice databases, but this one is very simple. So we have the basic information, which is the countries involved and the dates of entry into force. Exemptions for posted workers. So what's a posted worker? Let's say Coca-Cola wants to send John from the US to Italy. He's technically working for a US company, but working in Italy. So to avoid that he pays the contributions in 2 countries, there's an agreement that says that they're exempted for 2 years or 5 years, etc. And then facilitated access to benefits. This is rather usually it usually concerns pensions. So usually there's a minimum qualifying period. You need 10 years of contributions to qualify for a pension. And if you're a very mobile worker, there's the chance that you haven't accumulated this in one country, so you can add them up. Third country totalization is pretty simple. It's what it sounds like, just adding it up with a third country. And so the process to date, we had data collection by region. We also have social security profiles that look at the policies on the 9 branches of Social Security. So we integrated the collection with that. And together with Edgardo and Wenchen, we developed a pilot user interface. So using SDMX as the statistical model and using the .stat suite data explorer. And perhaps what's interesting for you is that we presented this pilot interface to ESA members and received overwhelmingly positive feedback. So it's an interesting case. So if you look here, here's an example of the .stat interface. You can see on the left, there's just for instance, this is for Canada. Canada is one of the countries, together with Korea, that has really a lot of bilateral agreements. And so you can see the identifiers on the left, who the partner country is, the date of entry into force, and we also have an agreement identifier. Then the number of months that different workers are exempted, and then this is just a binary yes-no in terms of which branches are covered and whether you allow for third country totalization. So you can see, let's say in the case of Canada, that it's overwhelmingly pensions, old age, disability, and survivors. So yes, this is a non-statistical SDMX application. And it's part of an ongoing collaboration between the ESA and the ILO, which I'll get to at the end. These next slides just show you what it looks like. So this is the Data Explorer. And the features that are relevant for statistics are also quite interesting for a policy database. So for instance, here we've been able to integrate the link to the agreement text. In some cases, it depends per agreement, but there's usually the agreement text and then also the implementation agreement text, so it's two laws. And then notes. I won't go through this in too much detail, but our members were impressed with the possibility to select multiple countries, to change the layout, and to have identifiers so they can map it, and to download. We got, the feedback we got was that it was easy, intuitive, well-structured, efficient, user-friendly, smooth. And for us as the ESA, what's really interesting is how quickly you can go from database to dissemination, with very, very confident help modeling, but yeah. Another project, so if you think of these international agreements, if you have a mobile worker and he's receiving a pension, so partially, let's say from Canada, partially from Italy, eventually, if their situation changes, for instance, residence, life status, etc., you want to stop paying that pension or change it to a survivor's pension, etc. So a second SDMX application that we're exploring together with the Statistics Department of the ILO is using SDMX for data exchange. So the criteria for establishing eligibility is personal data, residence status, worked periods, total worked periods across countries, and other information. And for payment continuity, it's life status, income and residence, and other information. So ESA is exploring using SDMX to standardize different data types and support data exchange operations. So the DSD to model the data types, prioritizing for now life status validation, and standardized data flows to help data exchange. One thing that isn't within the SDMX current functionalities is privacy and security measures. So we're using a third-party provider to encrypt the information. And so what it would look like, let's say Italy's INPS, they know the ESA format, they can download the data that's been converted into this format, then convert it into their nationals and check the records and vice versa. So it's really this exchange function. And yeah, so the next steps before we go piloting, we're just updating data, activating the multilingual features, and we're exploring, of course, the data exchange. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Megan. And I know many of us always struggle with meeting the data visualization needs of our users. Many times we don't even ask them. So congratulations for working to get so much feedback from your user base. Now we'll be moving on to the third presentation from Prudence Humaniqua. This will be a remote presentation, so I'm counting on our colleagues here to get a WebEx up and running, and then I believe I'll be moving these slides along.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Prudence. Thanks for joining us. I'll be moving the slides along for you, so just let me know next slide whenever you require one.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Tizzy Prudence Somanikwa from the Department of Geography and Geoinformation Science under the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences of Lupane State University in Zimbabwe. Today, I'm going to be presenting on how I utilized SDMX data in my line of work as a GIS professional. The title of my presentation is an exploratory spatial data analysis excuse me, of e-government and e-participation across Africa using SDMX data. May we go to the next slide? Okay, just a background to the study that I did. We know that socio-economic digitalization significantly contributes to sustainable development on a global scale all the way to local scales. However, digital divide remains a barrier to equitable progress towards the SDGs. Therefore, targeted interventions involving the digital economy are critical for reducing inequalities according to the SDG 10 and partnership for the for all the SDGs according to SDG 17. And digitalization is a major driving factor for globalization. Hence, we need to find ways to bridge the digital divide. This study combined SDMX data, the standardized format for statistics, as well as GIS data under the domain of geography for generating actionable insights on the digital divide across Africa. May we please move to the next slide? Okay, my study area was Africa, all the 54 countries of Africa is presented on the map. Can we move to the next slide? Okay, as I'm sure is reiterated before, SDMX is a statistical data and metadata exchange, which is the global language for official statistics. Therefore, it provides a standardized framework for describing and sharing statistical data. In this presentation, I leveraged SDMX to do the exploratory spatial data analysis, looking at e-government and e-participation across Africa. Whilst I did not use APIs, I used pre-packaged SDMX datasets. I was through the standardized format of SDMX, I was able to easily integrate and interoperate various tools and technologies, such as the Quantum Geographical Information System, the GeoDA software, and Google Base Maps, therefore eliminating data harmonization barriers or errors through which are often associated with manual entry. And there is also the advantage of scalability and reproducibility, since one can repeat the same workflow for many other indicators beyond the digital measures of e-government and e-participation. And I believe that there will be repeatability as new SDMX releases come out. Shall we move to the next slide? Okay, so how did SDMX enable my my spatial analysis? As I've said before, looking at point number 1, the SDMX standards, it allows for comparability, which is cross-country comparability, which is critical for continental analysis. Therefore, instead of manual cleaning and manual entry of data, I could easily do an attribute join in a geographical information system between the SDMX data and the shape files in order for me to do the mapping so that I can review the policy relevant patterns and conduct a more complicated exploratory spatial data analysis as will be presented in the annex file. May we please move to the next slide. Okay, the ESTA is in full exploratory spatial data analysis. These are the crucial set of techniques used to describe and visualize spatial data. So I'm looking at the statistics of e-government and e-participation, but across space, specifically the 54 African countries. We are unveiling the patterns and disparities across space that might not be immediately obvious. So in this presentation, I'm only going to present the chloropleth maps, but then in the annex file, I've presented the univariate and bivariate global Moran's eye, and as well as the local Moran's eye. I'm sure it will be available after the presentation. Shall we move to the next slide? E-government or electronic governments assesses a country's digital transformation, or should I say penetration, by measuring based on the three factors, which are online services, telecommunication, and human capital. So we note that in the local quantile for the African countries, we've got Western Sahara, which is a non-self-governing territory, and countries in the Sahel region, and the Horn of Africa, such as Somalia and South Sudan. And then in the upper quantile, we have newly industrialized countries in Africa and some developed countries such as South Africa, Botswana, and Eswatini and Kenya. So I move to the next slide. And then e-participation it measures the uptake of the e-government initiatives. It refers to the use of ICT to enhance and enable citizens' involvement in government and policy making processes, making them active partners rather than passive information users. Similarly, in the lower quartile, we've got countries in the Sahel region, but it's somehow extending to the Sahara Desert, with countries such as Eritrea, Western Sahara, Comoros, and so forth. But then in the upper quintile countries again, South Africa remains a leading country in Africa in digitalization, together with Tunisia, Togo, and Egypt. So we see that the spatial disparities, they are variations in the policies pertaining to socio-economic policies pertaining to e-government and e-participation, for example. So in conclusion, shall we move to the next slide? In conclusion, adapting SDMX goes beyond data exchange, but it's also about making data actionable. And it is essential, in my case, it was an essential step towards advanced techniques such as ESDA to create evidence-based policies for e-governance in Africa. So it bridged the gap between statistics and my domain of geography. Therefore, SDMX compliant data portals should include geospatial information, and we advocate for the use of SDMX standards. I thank you.
Thanks so much, Prudence. It's great to see the increasing use of spatial analysis over SDMX data. And if you could stay online while we're doing a general Q&A for the panel, in case some questions come in on your work, that would be great. I should also mention that Prudence has included an extensive annex on the methods that she used, which will be, I believe, available on the proceedings of the conference. And with that, I think we have perhaps, well, I leave it to our organizers, but 5-10 minutes for Q&A. Shatong.
My question goes to the colleagues from BIS. I'm interested about this blockchain. Really, to me, it's actually the first time to see how we can use the blockchain to transfer a SDMX message. So I want to get a bit more details to how you do the encryption, and also like when the receipt side, how you to receive it and decrypt it, the message. And a bit more maybe on the infrastructure requirements, like what are the storage needed, and something to give more details. Yeah, thank you.
I don't see any other immediate hands raised, so perhaps, oh, except for Abdullah down there.
Yeah, my question also goes to BIS. It's very interesting and very, a presentation that caught me by surprise. But the use case I have in mind is I think it's, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's slightly different from what you mentioned, because you mentioned that, well, Eurostat is the golden source, and now you can trace it back to Eurostat. But the thing is that Eurostat is almost certainly not the golden source. Most likely, the figure had come from one of its member states, right? That would be the golden source. So what the use case I have in mind is how to trace the figures as they travel from data reporters up to collectors and maybe to third and fourth parties. And the difficulty is that they may transmute along the way. They may be adjusted, for example, for international comparability. Usually, this type of, usually to understand how these figures were obtained, reference metadata are used. They are not granular enough. It's very difficult to understand how the figure was produced. That is a source of controversy, particularly between countries and international agencies. So I've never thought that this could be addressed through anything other than, well, I thought that this would be really a tough call to use anything other than reference metadata to address that. But if blockchain or can be used to address that, or crypto or something, that would be really interesting if you could say a few words about that.
And we'll take one more from Edgardo. Oh.
Yeah, thanks. Just
okay, Luis then.
Very quick question also for BIS team, but related to Megan's presentation, because if you noted in the second project that ESA is using SDMX4, that is the exchange of information about termination of services or benefits between countries, one of the issues, not solved issues yet with SDMX, is the authentication and encryption of the message. So I know that blockchain provides much more than that, but my question is whether you think that using blockchain for exchanging SDMX data could be a reasonable and affordable solution for encryption and authentication only, just talking about this benefit.
Okay. Just a comment on the last presentation from Prudence. On the index, on the maps, she noticed that Ghana did well, but what is written, Ghana is written on the map of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. So maybe you need to check if it is Cote d'Ivoire or Ghana. So.
We'll leave that one for Prudence to be able to answer. But let's start with the 3 questions on blockchain to start with.
So, Mario and Glenn, you will please complement. So I think on the, methods to, let's say, decrypt and encrypt and decrypt, yeah. Indeed, it's not easy to basically choose at which level do you want to create the, let's say, the hash. Is it at the time series level, at the observation level? Is it at the submission, at the data set level? So it depends heavily on the use case. Yeah, everything is possible, but that's something you need to decide before. And obviously the complexity increases, yeah, the more granular you go. Yeah. The other thing in terms of the technology, what is it we are using? I mean, basically Python. It's a Python implementation, and Mario will say maybe a little bit more about the blockchain, because we actually analyzed, I think, 10 different or even more different blockchain setups. And as you see, one of the main driving forces was actually the cost, because we said if you want to offer an implementation in our open source domain, it needs to be really cost effective. And I don't know whether some of you deal with cryptocurrencies, but if you invest in Bitcoin, for example, at the moment the transaction cost is actually quite high, because energy consumption, and also there are not so many blocks left. So this is why we actually spend quite a lot of effort to find a solution which is really affordable. And I think this is one of the main contributions, I would say, of this proof of concept. So if anybody's interested, and by the way, I just heard actually that Eurostat is also investing in a similar project. So obviously there seems to be demand. So I suggest look at our implementation because it might save you a lot of money. And I'll let Mario complement a little bit on that before I move to the next point.
Thanks, Rafael. Right, just a bit of complementation. What we've built here is a fast API microservice plus a Streamlit UI. Now, the Streamlit is irrelevant. You can do this into any corporate platform. You could take Angular, you could take whatever. You could put many different UIs. The key point here is the microservice is so more or less like a microservice as a verification for humans and AI agents, right? So the thing is, it's very performant. As Rafael mentions, we've looked at different setups. There are also other blockchains which have even lower costs, but then you have to think of what is the algorithm that's behind this. Like the only thing that's really contrasting here with content credentials, like if you look into this field, content credentials, you have to sit on a GitLab server or on somebody, you have to trust somebody that whoever is the source of this repository, that they say who the originator is. Now here, you've recorded a transaction immutably on a ledger, and anybody can recreate the hashing if they have the file, right? So now we're using SHA-3512. This is just an algorithm in terms of attribute ordering and so on. You could make it such that attribute ordering would be relevant, or namespace collisions. There's also a bit of a combinatorial attacks. We've considered all sorts of things. So you can make this thing very, very efficient in terms of publishing and in terms of verification. The publishing time of this particular version is about 3 to 5 seconds. So ideally, we wanted something that's about 5 seconds in a verification, more or less like a real-time verification, which also enables nowcasting, all sorts of other use cases. Now, in terms of this microservice would be just sitting somewhere. It's an API-based, right? So it's a request-response thing, but you could also make it Kafka-wise, let's put it this way. So you could integrate it anywhere, but it's on development, so we're using a development node for this. Obviously, you can't put it right into production, but it's pretty much the same thing what you're doing in production, right? And the thing is, you can integrate this to almost anything and make sure that verification scales logarithmically with respect to the size of the Merkle tree. So meaning if I take 1 million or many millions of hashes, store them on a Merkle root, then it will still take me a second to verify this. And then you can do zero knowledge proofs on this. Basically, you could say with certainty if a particular transformation or validation was used and performed without doing it yourself. So that's another benefit. I mean, there's really, I don't know, plenty of use cases about this. We just took the first ones. And the whole point is we've had all the algorithms. We see that they're efficient. Cost-wise, we've have all the costs. We even have a model which will tell you if to batch, when to batch, how much to batch, and so on. So these are all things considered. But in terms of technology, you could write this also in Spring Boot. I mean, I don't really care about the language. So it's very easy to use. It's very straightforward. But on our POC side, it's a fast API.
Right, and maybe to come to the next question. So, traceability. Data are being collected by the National Statistical Agency, goes to the, international organization, goes to the next. This is exactly a use case for blockchain because, when you think about smart contracting, it's nothing else. Smart contracting in commercial banks, actually, you have like 10 different intermediaries before a contract is really signed. It goes from the front office to the back office to the clearing agency, etc. And at every step, somebody modifies something. Yeah? It can be something in the contract. It can be maybe adding some additional information. And this entire chain is actually stored in the blockchain, and all the benefits which we listed today are available. So I think it's an opportunity for official statistics to actually make use of this technology because there are plenty of these technologies or options available. It's cheap, it's fast, as Mario said. I think I'm surprised that we have not really used it yet. So answer is absolutely yes. Glenn, Mario, want to add?
Just one more thing I remembered. There was a question about storage. Now, normally, if you look at a classical world and you want to send data from point A to point B, you have to worry about sending large volumes of data. Then the other institute's going to check this data, run their rules, and validation rules, logic. There could be, I'm not saying we should implement smart contracts in our product. We're just using XRP for the memo, and we're memoing an object, right? So if you want to do complex use cases, there might be other networks to consider. But we have a model to calculate all the costs automatically. And now you don't really need to send this many of objects. Now you can have your S3, or your database, whatever storage you want, data lake, you name it, in your institution, and you're just sending basically practically 2 kilobytes of hash from one point to the other. So assuming we could do also the zero knowledge proof use case, then you're really sending 2 kilobytes. So now you can think in terms of immutable dashboards, right? There's, if you have the GDP, consumer price index, all sort of these things on the chain, then you could be thinking about inflation-linked products, I don't know, credit links notes, derivatives, all sorts of stuff that can spin off from this. And then dashboards powered by these immutable data sets. And even because it's so fast and you're sending so little data, then this whole business of anomaly detection from agents and nowcasting and all sorts of stuff, you could do this in an edge AI, and it would practically take you a few seconds. So that's another benefit.
Yeah, just to pick up on this sort of question about, I think the question you asked, Edgar, which is about trusted lineage. I mean, this is a bit of a holy grail. And of course, I mean, when we sort of started looking at this, of course, some of the alternative options, of course, Mario sort of outlined was content credentials. And in the digital media space, this is a big issue, clearly, as well, to the extent that, videos and, digital reports and things which are sort of kicking around, users and news agencies, need to know where these things have come from. And within that space, they're looking very closely at content credentials, and there's a standard called CP or C2PA, I think, which is sort of emerging. It's a collaboration between Microsoft and possibly Google and the BBC in the UK. But the advantage here is obviously the blockchain is precisely, I think, as Rafael laid out here, this ability to also hold this chain of trust. So this is another really good example why blockchain actually works really well here.
I'll just jump 2 sentences more, because I remember there was also a question about cryptography. And I'll tell you a bit about cryptography in 2 sentences, or I'll try. Now, this whole SHA business, what it's doing is taking a big integer, and it's looking if it's a combination of 2 prime integers, right? Now, I also had some experience with quantum physics, and you see there's quantum computers on the rise, and it seems like these kind of problems are easier to solve. Now, the benefit of a blockchain is you can make sure that a particular transaction is signed by a private key, right? Now, here we use an example, a SHA-3512, so it will take a very long time for a quantum computer to break it, but still. And this will be no issue. This is really no issue to change the algorithm to another more complex algorithm where the quantum computer can't solve it. So, for example, there's several problems. One example is a lattice problem, solving a lattice problem with the lithium particle and so on. So this is something we've also considered.
Thank you. I hope we adequately answered those questions. I'd like to check if Prudence is still online with us for Lewis's question. Prudence.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Lewis, I don't know if it would be good if you could rephrase your question, but I understood that you were questioning the mapping sources between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire that were used. Can we get a microphone?
Okay.
Thank you. We'll check that in the data annex that we get provided as well. Let's see, where are we at? Well, we're at 3 p.m. I think we should probably close it down. I have one quick question, though, that I would like to ask to Megan, which is, since you got all this feedback from your users, what was the number one thing you wish you could provide them from going from SDMX, let's say APIs and data sources into the visualization user space?
Well, I think one thing that we came across was that our data set surprisingly was quite large because there's the 9 branches. And so when we tried to load right now what I showed is a country flow. We also have flows by international agreements, but when we tried to load the entire database into .stat, it truncated. That I think will be addressed with the 3.0 or 3.1, yeah, I think if for these non-standard applications, perhaps this idea of the multi-dimensional model will be useful. The other thing that we got comments on, and I think this was just in terms of how we documented it, was just making it really transparent and sort of holding the hand of the user in terms of like who exactly they send feedback to, what exactly each term means, etc. Because I think people who are less comfortable with this expect a lot more, assistance. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks to our panel. And that concludes session 8. Let me pass back to Raphael. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So before we start the panel, we have a feedback Slido, yeah? I mean, we can have not enough Slidos, yeah? Because we want to obviously know, how did you like the conference? What do you want to see in the next conference? So there are a number of questions. And please take the time over the next couple of minutes to answer those. And we will basically, at the end of the panel, we will close the Slido. So you have something like half an hour time to enter your feedback. Yeah? All right. Thank you very much. And with this, over to the panel. Yeah?
So, good afternoon. Shall we start the last session? Yes. Well, many thanks to each and every one of you that are here today attending this last session. I have to say that I'm pleased to see the continuous engagement and participation since Monday, although some with jet lag. So indeed, a good participation. So my name is Ana Padrão. I'm head of the Statistical Tools section at the European Central Bank. And I have the honor to moderate this last session today, this panel discussion with my esteemed colleagues here in the table. So it's a last session, but I would say not least. And not least because the human perspective, the close collaboration among all of us is at the core of all achievements that we have seen throughout these 3 days of the Global Conference and as well beyond the conference. So let me start by introducing the panel members of this SDMX Communities panel. So on my right, Eric is the head of the Smart Data at OECD Statistics and Data Directorate. Far right, then Marek works in the Eurostat unit, supporting the data and metadata exchange across the European statistical system. So on my left, Momar serves as a Senior Statistics Information Systems Officer at the Statistics Department of the African Development Bank. And further on my left, Rafael is employed by the Bank of International Settlements in the Monetary and Economic Department. So well known by a majority of you, but still good to introduce all the panel members. So there is also a Slido, and now is the last Slido. So this Slido, please take note of it, and you can answer till the 9th of October. So the results then will be published after the conference. You can take your time to answer it. If needed, I can also bring up the Slido later at the end. So we will start with some 5-minute statement from each of you. And let me start with Eric, that in the past 15 years, well, Eric, you and your team, you developed the statistical information system, the collaboration community. That was, we have seen it in several presentations throughout the conference. So please let us know a bit more about this community.
Thank you, Anna. I think you summarized well in your introductory remark when you said, communities is about people. And I think we really enjoyed over the past days such a great conversations and sort of forging friendships and future collaborations. And that's really the gist of it, I guess. Perhaps to develop our most precious asset, which is trust. But today I want to develop really one idea, which is that, I don't know if, I have slides. So I want to really develop one idea, which is that we have two aspirations as a community. One is to be inclusive. That's of course entailed by the fact that everything we do is open source, open knowledge, freely reusable to maximize the impact. At the same time, we want to be sustainable. And so we need a sustainable funding model to be able to continue to deliver, develop, maintain our platform, and hopefully innovate. These are not necessarily contradictory aspirations, but there is a tension between them, and this is the point I want to address and see how, in the context of our community, with a multi-tier model, we are trying to address that. At the core of this model, we have what we call the tier 1 members of our community, 20 statistical organizations, with the exceptional addition of the World Bank. Thanks, Tony, for announcing that yesterday, who are contributing, of course, financially to the project, but also with their experience, ideas to product design, quality assurance, and of course, at the table when we prioritize a product roadmap. Second key player are the partners. Special thanks, special gratitude to Eurostat, long-standing partner with the use of the SDMX libraries in the .stat suite, but also to the BIS. You could see how many projects features FMR in association with .stat suite, and this is the result of a very engaged collaboration over the past years, and also the SDMX Lab is a good manifestation of that. Special thanks, of course, to all our capacity building partners, UNSD, UNESCAP, more recently UNESCO, for all the joint activities, technical assistance around the world. Then we have what we would call the tier 2 and tier 3 organizations. So what is that? This is, as we speak, .stat and .sdmx are being deployed in 50 more organizations around the world. Tier 2 organizations who are supported by one of our members. The LMIS network developed by the ILO is exceptional from that perspective, but as you could see, we have also the Pacific community developing statistical infrastructure in the Pacific Island states. Beyond, we also have more than 1,300 certified learners around the world, thanks to the .stat Academy. So now, let's wrap up. What's the model? We have a bedrock. This bedrock somehow is in this room. It's the community, the larger community SDMX ecosystem. And as part of that, underpinned, of course, by the use of SDMX as a common language, is this contribution by partners to our project. The second tier, the second layer is OECD. As a lead organization, we are contributing 40 to 50% of the funding stream to cover for the coordination of the community management, and the product maintenance aspect, including all the aspects related to DevSecOps, product quality assurance, and so on and so forth. And then you have the tier 1 contribution, which covers, of course, for the support of the members, but also for all the new features that we can develop thanks to their contribution and innovation that can happen. But that's not sufficient, and hence wise we have these co-investment opportunities that we scope, I would say, on an ongoing basis. We have 4 of them currently being under discussion. They're on the screen, and they were introduced by Jonathan 2 days ago. 2 of them are quite advanced. 1 of them is already secured in terms of funding. On the second one, SDMX and AI, of course, we have this conversation with the IMF around the Global Statistics Commons and StatGPT, and how to forge a common approach and co-investment approach in that space. So in conclusion, with this multi-tier model, I think we are in a spot where we achieve this sort of balanced approach to being inclusive on the one side and protecting a sustainable model at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So, yes, thank you. So from the inclusiveness, but at the same time looking for the sustainable funding model, now we move to BIS. So, Rafael, you oversee the statistical data processing, analysis, and dissemination systems at BIS. So, give us more insights about the SDMX ecosystem of open source resources, because you have been quite in the forefront of open source.
Right. So, thanks, Anna. So, I don't think I need to say much about why our community is important here. I think maybe just one point, which is we have seen also in the conference here, a lot of organizations are doing the same thing. which on the one hand side is also important because you need to actually prototype, you need to do things yourself in order to learn. But obviously, we can also, let's say, make use of, let's say, knowledge of tools, of projects which other organizations already developed in order to, let's say, just reduce the, let's say, cost, yeah? Reduce the duplication of effort. Now, when SDMX.io was created, and that was like 2 years ago, the main point or the main trigger point for this was that a number of organizations came to us and said, I actually have this open source tool, but I don't really know where to publish it. And also, how do I make this available to the SDMX community? And we are not talking about large production tools like .stat, but we are talking about, you know, even code snippets, smaller scripts, and a little application which just does one thing. And there we saw there's actually a gap. We have the SDMX.org page, but SDMX.org is about the SDMX standard. Yeah, it's about the guidelines. Yeah, it's about the technical documentation, etc., etc. But we didn't have a page where we also made the tools available. And it's not just about a list of tools. This is something which we have on SDMX.org. It's about also describing, you know, also giving access to the GitHub repository, also describing a little bit the project, maybe a roadmap, some training material around the tool. And actually the next step, you will see this very soon on SDMX.io, is even in the data science area to publish scripts which use the tool, can be very small code snippets, which basically can be used by colleagues which are maybe also not so familiar with SDMX. So you see, SDMX.io is all about open source. It's about bringing the tools you develop in your organizations into one platform, harmonize the way how we present this information on this platform, and therefore increase the footprint of this tooling ecosystem in our communities. So I have listed a couple of bullet points here. I will not go through them. One important one which we learned in the last survey which we did amongst the SDMX sponsors is how can we lower the barrier for entry. And you see the SDMX lab, you will see this tomorrow, which is part of SDMX.io. It's one initiative which also was initiated by this SDMX.io. So if you have not already done so, have a look at the SDMX.io website. And you see this is how it looks like. You see on the top, software learning data science. Data science will come very soon. You see some events, especially webinars. And then you, of course, everybody's invited here because it's not just for the IT colleagues, it's really for the data modelers, the metadata managers, the statisticians, data collectors, and the IT colleagues. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raphael, and all the congregation of tools and resources, open source resources that are really needed for the community at large. So now, yes, so now also here on my left side, Momar, you are leading the African Development Bank flagship initiative, the Africa Information Highway. So we are keen to know more. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Also, thank you for all the organizers. This one is okay? Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity as well to present the ongoing effort from the African Development Bank as part of our Africa Information Highway initiative. It is also by nature community-driven. So the bank is serving all our regional member countries, around 54 countries. And the initiative is, dealing with all countries. We provide this support as a public good, provide also this open data platform as a public good, and build a team around it to provide support to African countries to also enhance their capacity in terms of data management and dissemination, and also promote as well the SDMX implementation in Africa. So this initiative, started so far, almost 10 years ago. It's around 2012, 2013. And it has been a long journey, right? So, and the key objective currently are enhancing the data access in from African countries, and also promote the use of standards, including SDMX and also others, and as well enhancing also data openness and empowering Africa data ecosystem. And this, we are doing that through 3 main activities. The first one is the Open Data Platform, which is our key product on which we are supporting countries. And of course, we are also the main institution in Africa promoting SDMX, providing a lot of capacity on it. And also recently as well, we start making effort on the Data Innovation Lab, which also assists countries to leverage big data and others for the official statistics. So these are currently our key, 3 pillars on which we are, supporting countries in the continent. So for the Open Data Platform, which is mainly the purpose of this session from outside, when we started the initiative in 2012, it was mainly for focusing on data dissemination. We make sure that data which are there sitting at office, at NSOs, are out there and accessible. That was our first objective. And that was, because usually most of the countries, they show that once they have their data produced and they have the report done in PDF and published on the website, for them that the work is done. And that used to be the process from their side. So it was, for us, a challenge to really let them know that, okay, this is very good, but you also have to make another step to make this data available through open data so that your users can access it easily. And we provide that tool since 2012, as I said. And after almost 10 years, as all kind of system, it requires to be enhanced. So since 1.5 years, we have been working to revamp this system and make sure that it becomes SDMX compliant and native. The first version also includes some SDMX capabilities that we use in collaboration with our colleague from IMF to implement the NSTP page. But it was not natively SDMX. And it becomes much more urgent from the continent to also have tools which are completely SDMX compliant on which we can rely, and also being able to communicate data efficiently. So, and to do so, our objective was to mainly avoid duplicating and also relying on available tools. When we start this process, we make a kind of brainstorming, exploring all kind of potential tools that we may use on which we can build. And after our assessment, so we base our revamping using the eStart toolkit on which we build on, add functionalities, adapt it on our need, and make it available also as a public good and open source tool. So our objective here is mainly to make sure that countries can have data published in a single entry point, and from there we can reuse that. And I think this point was also mentioned in the first day or yesterday during this panel discussion where Abdullah was mentioning having a kind of product like SDGs page and so on and so on. Our objective here is to make sure that we provide a single backend system for African countries from which now they can rely and have any kind of product. It could be the NSTP page, it could be the SDG page, it could be any other targeted use case, but the backend will be the single one on which we can rely on. And also we have supported countries that already start making effort on this migration to as well develop a mobile application that is getting data from the SDMX endpoint and being able as well to display data on offline mode. And this is so far, implemented by Senegal, and it is also available on the Google Play Store and also iOS in the 2 version. And all other countries now are mainly also requesting our support because they see the benefit of this. Imagine having your director or a minister or even the president, having this kind of access and offline and being able to rely on data during a kind of policy discussion and so on. So that's our objective. Make sure that data are much more used and easily used. And also, we are also pushing to, for instance, reuse some other tool, right? So we also know about the OECD, Power BI, Power BI connector that we also are using as well to support countries to connect Power BI on that tool as well. And it's working quite well currently. And a quick example that we can give here is Bank of Botswana. They are currently on the progress of migration, and they wanted to use a Power BI for their need. And we managed to support them as well to use this connector and have this data on Power BI from their side. So this last slide is mainly what is now our way forward, going forward. So we have been working to, almost, the bank has been the main support of this initiative almost 10 years now. So last year in the CODG meeting, the Committee of Director General of Statistics Office in Africa, the CODG endorsed it to have what we call a Pan-African data sharing community, right? And this community will, based on the ODP2, and will open the door that other institutions in the continent, like African Union or UNECA, and all other partners, private sector, academia, right, can also contribute on this effort. And this is under the umbrella of the Shasha2, where we have what we call SDGs, special technical groups. And one of them, the bank is the one leading that group, and it will be under this SDG group that we are going to implement this Pan-African data sharing community, where now other partners can really put effort on that. It could be on a kind of human resource or even funding to as well support the implementation of this tool going forward. So this is where now we are going to really make it much more open and also get contribution from different actors in the continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. It was so insightful, your presentation, that I forgot to look at the watch. So, thank you. So now, Marek.
Thank
so
you.
As we are, well, I think you have the control, yes? Okay, if you advance to your, yes. So Marek, as we are now in Rome, yes, let us know more about the European statistical system that is driven by Eurostat. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So let's start with two questions. What is the European statistical system and why it is here? Often when we speak about European Union and we see the European flag, we strictly speak or think about European Union, but the European statistical systems goes much beyond it. So we are covering the European free trade area countries, we are covering the potential and candidate countries, and these you can see highlighted on the map. But we are also covering the European neighborhood partnership to the east and to the south, covering more of the Eastern Europe and North Caucasus, as well as the Mediterranean area. So the outreach is really nearly the whole European region, geographical Europe. And since the beginning of the European community, the policymakers wanted to make policy decisions, planning and implementation based on data. And data from different countries needs to be harmonized, standardized and coordinated. So the key role of the European statistical system is to ensure the harmonization of different statistical domains and the provision of these harmonized data. And at the beginning, I forgot to say the most important thing, which is that European statistical system is a partnership. It's a partnership between the Eurostat as the coordinator of the system and the countries, the member states. Then it's also the other institutions that exist, such as the European Central Bank, but also international organizations such as OECD, United Nations, IMF, World Bank, and many others with whom we cooperate. So now more specific about Eurostat and SDMX. Our role is mostly to provide technical support and tools that allows for the implementation at the level of the member states and in Eurostat itself. So we have a shared infrastructure and also shared tools that are supporting the countries. As one specific example, this year we have launched a contract to improve the SDMX technical documentation to make it easier to browse and search. We are already, or our contractor is already working on the requirements that are needed to to produce an improved way how to publish the technical specifications, and we are consulting the sponsor organizations and other members of the global community. And afterwards we will work on the assessment and we will develop a proposal. And an approved approach will afterwards be implemented that will allow for reviewing of the community the updated technical guidelines. And of course, we are not only looking on the existing ones, we are also foreseeing the implementation of the SDMX 3.0 documentation. We are also doing a lot of trainings and capacity buildings. Our trainings are not only for the EU member states or internal staff, but also open to all countries, and the recording of the trainings and training materials is available for free on the website. We implement the SDMX in statistical production, and for data sets that are covered by the legal act or the agreements reached, 86% of them is SDMX compliant. Here it's important to say that this does not mean the data arrive to us in the SDMX XML or SDMX CSV format. By SDMX compliant, we understand that it's any format that we can automatically run through our converters or through our automated tools to be able to be converted to the SDMX format. Now, in order to do all this in our framework, we have actually a very strong legal mandate. The role of Eurostat in the European statistics is essentially European law that defines its role, and we have also a sectoral statistics that in some cases goes to the technical details of what and how countries needs to report. And this defines in many aspects harmonized electronic reporting, SDMX structures, and so on. Other aspect is that all our dissemination is for free. All our data and all our tools are free for commercial and non-commercial purposes. So this is our big contribution to the collaborative framework. The other aspect is the multi-annual financial framework that establishes the finances of Eurostat and allocate budgets for statistics. And in fact, in the ESS, the financial burden is split between Eurostat and the member states. Eurostat is responsible for harmonization, coordination, and publishing of European statistics, while the member states are responsible for the collection and compilation of these statistics on their territory. Eurostat also plays an important role in financing and providing grants to the member states to be able to do these developments. And one of the key roles are developing the standards and ensuring harmonizations of these data and metadata, as well as the quality and the related processes. And last but not least, innovation is an important aspect of our work. In fact, innovation is not an option, it is a necessity. And it's nothing new for the European statistical system, because in recent years we have implemented many new things that help us to do the things in a more innovative and more efficient way. So yeah, that's all for my introduction.
Thank you, Madam. So let me start the discussion with all of you. So I see open source, so free resources supporting your community as a common denominator. So I see the SDMX communities that are thriving. So to what do you attribute the success? So maybe I start, Rafael? from Rafael.
Yeah, I think the keyword is economies of scale. Yeah, I mean, you see here there are so many colleagues from so many different nations, organizations. Everybody of us has to some extent an IT background or a data modeling or the statistical background. So it's really about economies of scale, make use of all the power which we have there and bundle this in these communities. Yeah. And I think what is very important when we look at SDMX.io, for example, what we provide is support and a little bit governance, because not everybody of us is familiar with licenses, for example. Yeah, so we can give some advice on this. Not everybody has a GitHub account, so we can actually give a little bit support on that. It's not that we are, let's say, providing a professional service here, but you know, it's collaboration. Everybody of us has solved the problem, and we bring the people together in SDMX.io in this open source community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. And for you, Momar, what is, to what extent do you attribute the success of your community?
Thank you so much. I think in general for the communities, the success is mainly linked to the nature of the standard itself. As you all know, the standard has been initiated and established in collaboration between all the sponsors that are supporting it. And that is a kind of spirit of collaboration which still remain in the community. And that I think is, that spirit that currently is guiding this effort of all the communities ongoing to make sure that this is the only way that we can achieve our objective, is to make sure that we work together. And the second point I see also is the benefit that countries and all partners are seeing now to implement SDMX. And the benefit also that the key partnership ongoing are also producing as well. If I take, for instance, our collaboration with IMF since almost 2015, we have been able, for instance, to support more than 40 African countries to implement an SDP. That's a huge achievement, right? And part of these 40 countries, 2 of them were able, for instance, to migrate from the EDDS to the SDDS standards. And if I consider, for instance, also the collaboration with UNSD, ONS UK recently, where we were able to also support Kenya to have this SDG, page as well set up. So all this benefit and this key impact that we are seeing is a key point that as well encourage all partners or all actors to make sure that this is the only way to go, collaboration instead of competition. So for me, that's the way to go. And we have a long way to go again. It's just a starting point for me. So we don't have the choice. Let's collaborate and make it so that we make impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Momar. And now, here on this side, Eric, regarding your community, to which factors do you attribute the success that he's having?
I think the key ingredient is trust and building trust over time. And of course, it applies strictly to the community, but also I think to the larger community. And then, yeah, you may wonder in a way, what is it that makes trust grow over time? I think there are many determinants. For example, a transparent governance or aiming for let's say excellent software quality assurance practices. So these are two ideas that come to my mind. I think trust is also what ultimately will help us in a way convince more decision makers to switch from let's say in-house development that could perhaps actually be met better with community-based developments. I think there are still many decision makers, especially perhaps in the wealthier organizations, who think still that being fully in control of an in-house development will help them be more agile and less risky, but it could actually be the reverse. So you could actually achieve better agility and better risk management with the community approach. So yeah, developing trust and trying to continue to convince more and more decision makers with the relevance of the community model.
Thank you. Thank you. And Marek, now your turn.
I agree. I simply agree with all my previous speakers. Okay, I believe the success of SDMX communities, not only European, but all of them, is because of the strong institutional support or the governance, the shared standards that are operational, working for the people, and the ecosystem of the tools and learning and capacity building. So if we summarize it, we have good governance, useful standards, supportive tools, and active community. How else would you define a success? So it is a success story because it is used in practice. Offices, the national administrations are able to put it in production, can see the benefits, the efficiency gains, have the tools that allows them to do the tasks faster and in an easier way. So we believe it is a success story simply by demonstration of how it is used, how it is being picked up, how much interest it essentially attracts. It's essentially, on our side, it's more than adopted. The SDMX is deeply integrated into the workflows for data and metadata exchange, and it yields benefits of more efficiency, cost savings, and better comparability, quality, and also faster data dissemination. So it is a success story on our side because we moved from theory to the practice, and we have a real improvements that we observed.
Thank you very much, Marek. So the success being measured by the usability and the number of community users. Very good. So now I will move to one question to each of you, and then we'll address the public. So let me start, yes, actually by you, Marek. So what are the biggest challenges to achieve your community goals? So you mentioned the success. So throughout your journey, what were the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, as they say, no pain, no gain. So no success comes without challenges. On a national level, mapping certain internal national systems to SDMX can be a very complex exercise that requires a lot of capacity, technical skills, times, and resources. The same way, the special features and local practices may lead to many interoperability issues. We also have to make sure that we ensure metadata consistency across many countries, and this is sometimes very complex vis-à-vis definition, timeliness, and coverage. On the side of the tools, it's not only about producing a tool. We have to sustaining their maintenance, their versions, their upgrades, the security technologies that are under the operating systems and on the internet exchanges, on the servers. So it's essentially constant maintenance and upgrading of these tools that is happening in the background. And also we have to keeping up with the new technology. We have heard a lot about AI in the previous days, and essentially the integration of AI in many of our tools is expected. And also what is very important is retaining expertise. We have a lot of colleagues that change job, experts with the long career that go to pension, or temporary staff that is trained, gain the experience, and afterwards it's impossible to retain it due to the temporary nature of their contract. So also the human resources and people that are essentially changing jobs is an important aspect that should not be overlooked. So yeah, I think this would be the challenges, but I believe we have a robust system that with our work we are trying to address them, and we will successfully overcome all these problems and push SDMX forward.
Thank you, Marek. So the pain was worth due to the gain. Thank you. So now, Rafael, how do you ensure that smaller or, let's say, less resourced organizations feel empowered to participate in the communities, and in particular to your SDMX IO community?
Right, yeah. I mean, the community has two sides, yeah. SDMX.io, there's the tool, let's say, producer, provider side, and there's the tool consumer side. And as I mentioned before, it's not just about these big production tools, but we also very soon publish, for example, these, let's say, scripts for data scientists. So the idea is that also colleagues who basically don't have a big project, lots of funding, they can actually make use to some of the SDMX.io content in their daily work. And I'm not just talking about the SDMX, let's say, community which is here, but I'm also talking about, students, the public, researchers, because somebody told me yesterday, 50% of the traffic on the data portal is from universities or researchers. Yeah, I was quite surprised. And how much do we offer actually for those colleagues? Yeah, in terms of tooling. Of course, yeah, we offer data and the data portals, but in terms of tooling, I think we don't offer a lot to this 50%. Yeah, I mean, this is a really large, let's say, amount. And so, yes, on the producer side, obviously, you also have a situation that some of the organizations don't have a lot of resources and funding. But this is all this contribution model of open source is all about, I can also contribute if I don't have a lot of resources. If I am, let's say, specialized in user interface design or implementation, and I want to make a change, yes, make a pull request. Approach the organization who published this software, and I'm pretty sure if, let's say, the architecture is good enough, it will be accepted and you have your feature. So, yeah, these are a few aspects I would, let's say, answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafael. So now, Momad, we have seen all, well, the achievements and as well the road ahead in your community. But which lessons have you learned from other communities, or networks, which have influenced the work of your community?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So I should say that as a starting point, we have been doing what kind of approach like learning by doing since we started at 2012. It's almost now more than 10 years. And we really learned a lot from this process where the bank was supporting countries. And it was quite challenging sometimes, right? Sometimes also we had some success, sometimes also it failed and so on. But yeah, so that really, I think that was a good experience on which we are now building going forward. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is mainly also through our collaboration with other partners. We have been also working very well with all of them, and that will really benefit to the initiative to as well learn from the best practices that had been done in other areas and how we can also amplify that in the continent. And usually also you can see where, for instance, a partner is providing a support to a country and we collaborate with them. And from there, our approach is we can partner, and from there we amplify to all other African countries. So this also has been our approach to make sure that we support countries. We can't cover all countries because it's a big continent, 54 countries, right? But still relying on partnership is our main approach. And I think there should be also a much more benefit to us. I mean, since the last, let's say, 10 years where we have been working on this and collaborating also with partners. So to summarize, it's mainly, first of all, on our own experience by learning by doing. That's the same approach. And learn from our challenges, from our, key challenges that we got from African countries and improve. And as well also take benefit from our key partners on which we have been working with, right? And amplify what we have done successfully with them. So that will be, our main approach, which will be very useful for us moving forward. And we also learned, for instance, that when we start working on this initiative as well, we saw that going forward, relying on open source tool is a way to go. And that is also something that we get from working with other partners, that this is the only way to go where we can sustain and also, I mean, maintain the success or the impact also in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So relying on partners, relying on open source. So Eric, what do you see as the most exciting opportunities for the SDMX communities in the next 5 years? So moving from what we have seen as current experience and now thinking of, well, Momar already mentioned amplifying to other countries, but where do you see the opportunities for the next 5 years?
Thank you for the question. I think the answer to your question was given in the first Slido, where I think 44% of the audience put AI readiness first. I liked, I think it was Niall who in the one of the first sessions said, like, it's as if we've been preparing the AI revolution for the past 25 years. And that's really a nice way of putting it, because indeed, in all the discussions, over the past months on AI readiness to support use cases we have been working on for many years, how to improve that accessibility, how to modernize through, the data automations and so on. So these use cases have been around for a while, and it seems like AI can really play a big role there. Not that it's going to be easy, but can really play an important role. Indeed, with SDMX over the past 25 years, we have been developing these practices, this tool, this community, whereby we can structure data, develop rich metadata. Of course, there are some gaps. We identified them. There is some element we need to add, perhaps, to the standard in terms of semantic layer, for example, or improved textual, let's say, metadata for AI's consumption. But this is all seems, within reach and achievable. So definitely that's the big, so SDMX as the sort of a major AI enabler is, I would say that's the most exciting, perhaps, goal we could set ourselves and bring to the statistical community.
Well, thank you very much for the insights of the next SDMX roadmap. Thank you. So now I would leave the floor to all of you if you have questions before I ask for concluding statements from each of the panel members. So 2 questions. Marco?
Thank you. Well, it's clear all these communities are very successful, and also that there is collaboration between all of you. But I want to talk about other communities. We briefly mentioned other communities, Rafael, academia. We heard the other technical communities, DPM or DDI. There's this work also to integrate with these communities. We saw also, private sector. We invited Google. We have private companies here. The communities of policymakers. We are trying also to work and sort of increase adoption of SDMX, by engaging with, say, central banks or Ministry of Finance, for example, through the Data Gaps Initiative. We included there like a recommendation on data standards. So my question is like which communities do you think would be more effective to engage from our point of view, from your special communities, for your individual communities, to increase adoption of SDMX and be more effective going forward?
Very good question. So let's take the other question and then, yes.
Hi.
Mario, yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the great talk. My 2 questions also revolve around one of these questions. Now, there are, the SDMX is a great model. It's a great community. Obviously, there's the issue that there's other types of statistical data models, statistical tools available. For example, Netherlands has their own thing. If you think about finance, then there's XBRL, DPM, and so on. Insurance, IOPA is doing their XBRL stuff as well. And now securities and complex financial products have FPML and all those things. Is the community also oriented in a direction where you could enhance tools that could go from one to the other model? Obviously, they're not bi-directional, right? There have to be some limits and some considerations to take into account. But would this be a direction which this community would follow, or the organizations would follow? And the other question is also a bit related on the AI part. Now, the big benefit of AI is, model context protocols, and the reason this is valid is because LLMs can have a vectorized database where they basically compute the distance between words. So it's basically giving you what's the highest probability of the next word coming. Now, you could do the same thing with statistics, right? So you could do this in a nowcasting sense, you could do this in a less complex sense. Are you considering also doing this in the statistical sense? So basically calculating the statistical distance between data points, between models, in order to establish some form of correlations, possible causalities, possible connections between all these different sets of models with their own complexities and own definitions. Now, I hope it was not too difficult or too gibberish, but I hope you got the point.
Any other question? No, I don't see it. One. No. Okay. So then, which communities should we engage in order to extend the coverage? Maybe Eric?
To me, one striking takeaway from this conference is what Marco was also mentioning, is the presence of the private sector. Not that it was absent in past conferences, but and I'm very glad to see some of the companies that were in Bahrain. But we really have many more, really ranging from the small startup to the Google mammoth, and with all the intermediaries. And so to me, it's a very good signal. It means our business sort of becomes attractive. AI is obviously an important trigger for that. It raises a big question on how do we partner with these players? How can we? And when we say the private sector is so diverse, they're not organized as a community like we are. So to me, it's more a question mark. So it's a big question mark on how can we use these dynamic movements in the private sector and leverage them. And so perhaps, for example, professional associations could be interesting. I'm thinking, for example, of the AI Alliance. But in any way, we are in this, I would say, difficult spot where we want to be heard. We want our protocols and standards to be accepted and taken in consideration. So our statistics is sort of well surfaced in the AI tools. That was the point also that George Simon were making in his keynote. And so I think we're still trying to find where is the space where we can have that dialogue and have it hopefully take place in a less asymmetric way than what it is today. So.
If I may add, with my own personal experience, I think we need to address academia. So if I take the example at home, my daughter at the university, for doing a specific assignment, she was going through AI to get the data, which was not in the end quite trusted. And I had to explain her what official statistics are, where to find the trusted, the official statistics. So if I may add as well, very personal, but I think is a sector that is the future. So the new generations that we also should address them and not leave it neglected. Yes, Marek?
It's a very good question because in my opinion, there are two areas. One is that, as I have said on my slide in the introduction, we don't yet have 100% coverage on the data we collect from the traditional sources. And if we move to the areas of voluntary statistics, we are even going below 80% coverage. So there is still some homework to do to cover the traditional data sources and the exchanges between the national administration and institutions. The other area are the, I would say, private or commercial data holders. There is a lot of companies that have a lot of data. For example, we are already cooperating with Booking and Airbnb, and their data allows us to compile statistics. You have uptake of the smart meters that allows daily or even every 15 minutes certain data and statistics to be compiled, but do we have infrastructure to process such quantity of the data for the purpose of statistics? Where exactly is the role of the data providers, member states, international institution in something that in theory could be automatized as a full data chain, but it's a new area to explore. So for me, we have to identify and approach the data holders and see how the data and information they have can be turned into the statistics. And for the second question, in my opinion, it also looks a little bit into the data analysis with certain things that you have mentioned. And of course, we can do a lot of things with the data because having the data is just the starting point for analyzing them and building upon it. But where exactly is our role and our job? We cannot do everything. We have to also leave the job for the data analysts. So one can easily say that, okay, once you have the data and you have all these nice tools, do one little extra step and one more step. But I think we also have to limit our job and to clearly define what is in the scope of our tasks. Otherwise, it would be unbearable burden. So certain things like forecast, gap filling, and so on, one can argue it's part of statistics. Somebody else can argue it's part of the data analysis. But at one point, somewhere needs to be the borderline, and this is the end of our playground, and work of somebody else should start there.
Many thanks, Marek. I think in the interest of time, we conclude here, and Mario, if you need additional information, well, you can approach us during the break. So to conclude, thank you very much to all the panel members. I would then ask each of you as a concluding statement. So concluding statement of this panel discussion, and if you wish, as well of the conference. So Marek.
I think it's important to realize that community is not sitting here on the panel, but on the other side of the audience. So it's you that are here, that is the part of the SDMX community, and that we have to engage in a useful exchanges, in a bilateral exchanges of information, ideas, and continue working together in the productive atmosphere.
Thank you, Marek. Eric?
I think, I mean, this conversation really reinforces my conviction that collaboration within communities, across communities, is not an option. It's really it's perhaps not a question of survival, but almost, I would say, for all of us, if you really think in the longer term. And I take away from this conversation that perhaps we should be more proactive, all of us. You're right, it's not just on the panel, it's really in the room. Whenever we have a project, a capacity to invest in something, perhaps we should very early in the development of this project share the ideas with others so that we can then identify opportunities where we can mutualize, reuse, create valuable synergies, and not do it once the project is delivered when it's too late. So perhaps we could take away this idea of being more yeah, more proactive in how we want to push this, let's say, community collaboration agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you so much. To our perspective, going forward, our concluding speech will be mainly from our side to engage with much more actors in the continent. So if I take the example of the bank, we have been mainly engaging with national statistic offices. And we see that there are also some other important actors, right, that also we should link with. And those are mainly central banks, for instance, which are very, very critical actors in the continent. So we start working with them currently and engaging with them for the SDMX capacity building and implementation. And so far there are, at least 3 to 4 ongoing efforts with Bank of Botswana, Reserve Bank of South Africa, and we also, planning with Bank of Mauritius, and so on and so on. So I think that's for us one important point going forward, to really engage with much more actors and not limit our scope only to NSOs. That's one point. The second point is to also encourage South-to-South collaboration. Our perspective also is to empower the RECs, the regional economic communities, where now they can be much more closer to countries and help them. And for that point as well, we are making a lot of effort on that, with, for instance, RECs like SADC, COMESA, EAC, and also the West African Economic Union, Monetary Union, or WAMU. And they're making a very, very good progress on that to support the countries in the region, to also support the SDMX capacity building as well and implementation. That would be another aspect that we consider important going forward, for this community in Africa. And the third point mainly will maybe respond to Marco's question about engaging with other communities. To us, academia is very important going forward. And in the perspective of engaging youth in statistics, they will have a very critical role to play. For instance, on this community, we have now an open source tool where there are very skilled young people in the university academia that can really, support and also, provide their contribution on that. So going forward, that's mainly our key point. Make a broader scope and reach out to much more actors in the continent, and also relying also as well to other communities, including academia. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Raphael.
Keep it short. A community, I think we started as a secret club, or as Bruno said, as alchemists.
The monks.
And there was an interesting conversation I had with a colleague here in the conference who said, actually, you reached a critical mass. And I think this is the key. The SDMX community reached a critical mass. And this also means that actually now there are more and more adoptions, and people see the benefits, and then the community starts to really live. So I think it's a little bit a turning point in the last 2 years, what I can see. Many more people here. So I think we're on a good path. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all. It's really impressive, the journey, the SDMX journey from the monks up to today. Indeed, we reached the critical mass, but the future is there, the youth is there. We have now other steps to take. Thank you very much to all panelists. Thank you very much to all of you. And now, well, some applause to all of you, and as well to the community. Yeah? So now, Raphael, the closing of the conference.
Right, yeah, I think we are all exhausted and overloaded, yeah. But I think it's still worth to say a few words, especially for those who actually worked in the background in order to make all this here possible. So, first of all, I think when you look back in the last 25 years, I think you see we have achieved a lot over this 25 years. And you also heard from all the presentations and the discussions, there's much more in the pipeline. We have seen many very successful implementations, and we have seen also, and I'm speaking here as a former, let's say, banker, we have seen the return of investment actually realizing. And this is what a lot of people basically demonstrated in all these great presentations. We have reached the critical mass, as I mentioned before.
What is also important, and this is the learning over the last few years, and this is also why we changed the business case now, is it's not just about exchange anymore, it's actually we are serving with SDMX the entire statistical value chain. And this was very clear in many of the presentations which we have seen. As many colleagues said, AI will play a very big role in the next couple of years. This is why we are now working on the roadmap or strategy prioritization for the next 5 years. And these aspects will obviously play a big role. So I think the entire SDMX project, and I'm probably biased, is a big success. It was actually impressively demonstrated by the number of participants at this global conference, because we had almost 400 registrations. We actually had to turn down quite a lot of people. And especially also we had to, unfortunately, turn down people who didn't have the funding to join. So I would like to say a big thank you to all the people who actually also participated remotely and who could not come to Basel. Thanks for all the work and for your contributions, and also we had to decline a lot of presentations. So we had almost 300 people here in the room. We had 70 different countries represented here. We had almost 120 organizations. I mean, these numbers are really big. So that shows SDMX is really a great success. Now also, what I hear from you, we did the second time the exhibition of the various private companies, and I hear from the colleagues that that's also something which we should continue. So also this, thanks again for the exhibitors for joining us and spending time and also helping us in further progressing with SDMX. Now, I would have hoped that I can announce the next location for the experts meeting and the global conference, but good things take a while. So I hope it's going to be a Christmas present. I suggest that you regularly visit the sdmx.org website, also sdmx.io. We will constantly post the news and also obviously the information about the next conferences there. And also there's one important thing which I really encourage you to do, is to use the user forum. This is something which, let's say, in the last couple of months was a little bit difficult because we had to migrate into LinkedIn. So now we are live. It works. Thanks a lot to the UNSC for this excellent job. So please make use of it. Post your questions. This is also a big part of our community work, where basically we can share our questions, knowledge, anything what you like regarding SDMX. So capacity training, just again the logistics. It's not going to be here. It's going to be at the central bank tomorrow and on Friday. Don't forget your ID card, your passport. Otherwise, the central bank is very strict on this. Yeah, you will not be allowed to enter. And and basically, I just have to say thanks. Thanks to the organizers, thanks to the Banca Italia, and especially a big thanks to Attilio. Not everybody of you knows that actually Attilio was really the brain and the machine. Yeah. So thanks a lot also to the SDMX organizing team. There were almost 40 people involved in making all this possible, the agenda, the capacity training, etc. Thanks also to all the speakers, to the chairs of the sessions, to the SDMX Secretariat, and obviously also to the SDMX sponsors who actually contributed a lot with funding. And yeah, thanks to all you for your active participation. I heard quite often, wow, there are a lot of questions. Actually, you're really active. And thanks a lot for the participation also online. The next time we will see how we can actually bring our online colleagues a little bit more into the discussion here. So that's food for thought for us. With this, I wish everybody a safe travel home and a good stay in Rome if you spend a few more days here in Rome, and you definitely enjoy the city if you are here. So all the best and thank you very much.